everybody. Welcome to another live stream. Our guest today is one of only 4 teachers mentored by Martin Barter to teach the Meisner Technique. Please welcome Ranjiv Perera.
Yeah, thank you.
I said your name right?
You did. You nailed it.
Okay.
Very much.
It's always like, I make sure I get those names right. Everything else is gravy, but if I mess up on your name, I'm just like...
The first hurdle is done.
Yeah, but how are you doing? How's everything going?
Really good, all things considered. What's going on in the world, hanging in there and making the most of it, what we all have to do.
Yep, it's, it is what it is, right? So want to learn a little bit about you, want to learn about your background and kind of how you got to where you're at now. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, we'll just start off there.
Absolutely. So first thing, I'm actually born and raised in Los Angeles, which is a bit unique in this industry.
That's not super common.
Not too common. I'm an LA guy, and being an LA guy, always around entertainment, loved it. My family was never into it. That's not their field. But it was something that I'd always been drawn to and loved. And high school did a little bit, but it was all those LA acting classes in the 90s that I went through and was taking. And there were some wonderful teachers that I encountered. Kim Darby was a huge influence on me back then. But there was one particular director who was teaching a class. He was from New York, and he had Xeroxed some pages from this book called Sanford Meisner on Acting, brought it to class, handed out the Xerox, and got us to try this exercise repetition. And I still recall we all had no idea what he was trying to teach us, and we joked about it a little bit. And he went on back to his scene study and all of that. But I kept those pages, and I read them, and I discovered there's a technique called the Meisner Technique. Got the book from a bookstore out here in LA called Samuel French, no longer there. But I read about it, read the book, and said, what is this? This is very interesting. Did a little bit more research and found out there was the Sanford Meisner Center in Los Angeles. I had no idea. It was back then even what is referred to as theater's best kept secret. There was a documentary done in 1990 about Sanford Meisner with that title.
Yes.
But I went and interviewed with Martin Barter, who was the head teacher at this point. This is in 2002. And he was the teacher there. Interviewed with him, and he accepted me to train under him. And I started with, the program is taught in 2 formats. The level 1 intensive, it's an accelerated version of the traditional technique. And I started that because when in the interview process, he explained that this is a 2-year acting training program. And I said, what? Please, in 2 years, how many different acting classes can I take in Los Angeles? Yeah. I wasn't ready to commit to that. So is there a faster way? Yes, the intensive. I did that, and in 5 weeks, we covered 3 months worth of material, and that opened my eyes to what this technique could do. And I said, I got to finish this. I got to do this entire program. So he put me into a twice-a-week class, a traditional program, to complete the first year. Upon doing that, you are invited to interview again for the second year training, which is another 9 months of class, meeting twice a week. And I did that. And once completing that, you're done. You're certified as a Meisner trained actor. Mm-hmm. That's what this technique is really about. It has a very clear beginning, middle, and end. And when you're done, you're done. It's not an ongoing class, which is typical for most schools' acting classes in Los Angeles, where students can come and go as they please. You can go back to that teacher and pick up where you left, or they're moving on, but they're teaching basically the same thing, recycling. A technique class, and Meisner, when it's taught the way it traditionally is meant to be taught, is that way. It's beginning, middle, and end, you're done. So I finished in 2004 as a student, trained as a student. Went out, got the agent, started doing the 45-minute drives to your audition in Santa Monica, 5 minutes in the room, right? That experience definitely was what the actor life in Los Angeles is, and it tired me just a bit. But I enjoyed it. It's still a chance to act, which is ultimately what it's all about. It was a mentor that I met in casting that I fell in love with. She's amazing. She mentored me and taught me production and casting side, Lisa Essary. She respected the fact that I had studied the Meisner Technique I did the full program. She's a New York girl who would study with Stella Adler. Talk about that a little later. So she's been out in LA for years, and I started being her reader just to assist her in some of her sessions, and from there just blew up and grew to her assistant and actually doing casting work right alongside her. And that was in mid-2000s, but there was a turning point there. In one of the sessions we did where we were doing the sessions, I was her reader, an actor had come in, he did his scene, and Lisa said, "Thank you very much, appreciate you coming in," was about to dismiss him, and I did the little turn to her, could I? She read it, go ahead. So I said, let me give you direction, let's try it this way. I'm his reader, so I gave him a note, and he got excited, he did the scene again, and then I gave him another note, let's try one more thing, let's do this. He was really excited, he played it, he did it as best as he could. And after that third take, Lisa said, "Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. We got everything we need." Dismissed him, but released him. As soon as the actor was out the door, Lisa said, "We're not here to teach the actors in the casting session." And in her very sweet and genuine and direct way, she was telling me this. And it wasn't that we were wasting time. It was the sensation that the actor got, the incorrect sensation that I'm encouraging him when it's pretty clear he doesn't have it. He's not going to get it, and we do have other actors to look at. And it was a moment when I realized, oh, crap, I am doing that, aren't I? And you can't do that in the room because it's a false encouragement to the actor. But it was a turning point. I realized I do enjoy directing, and I do enjoy coaching, helping actors into that role. It was in 2009. I returned back to Martin Barter at the Sanford Meisner Center. So one of the gifts that a graduate, a fraternity member of the Meisner graduation fraternity, one of the things that you get is the right and ability to come back and sit in on classes and on the entire two-year program. At any point, the students that are going through it, you can come in and sit. And a lot of times you'll get thrown up onto the stage to work with the student in some of the work that we do. So I went back. 2007, 2008 was the financial collapse, and we saw a shift in people pursuing this as a career. It's not a real job, get a real job. So I went to help him a bit with the theater and the school, and just to sit in on the classes and feel that. What I discovered, he had already, Martin Barter, being the very last teacher to work with Sanford Meisner, had teacher trained 3 other of his students to continue teaching this technique. And he was burnt out a bit by that and decided he didn't really want to continue teaching. And I said, no, it can't end with you. You got to keep doing it. I didn't intend for me, but an hour and a half interview later, he did agree to teacher train me. And for the next 4 years, teacher training in this field, it's a craft. So it's fundamentally an apprenticeship. And I went and got his coffee at Starbucks, answered the phone when class was going on, the phone would ring. And I sat behind him and watched him teach the program twice, again, in another 2-year program, another 2-year program over that 4-year period, and absorbed everything that this master teacher was doing. After I asked questions, we discussed some of the work that I'd say, why did you go in that direction with the student? It wasn't mine yet to fully understand it, and just observing, that's what a true apprenticeship is. And after 4 years, he relocated up to Seattle, Washington, his hometown. He went from Seattle to New York, where he studied with most of the major teachers, but Sandy was his mentor. And then he came back to LA. He came to LA with Sanford Meisner. I'll talk about that in the history a bit. And he relocated back up to Seattle, Washington, his hometown. When he did, he had me take over the LA classes. So I am the primary teacher here in Los Angeles for the Sanford Meisner Center under. He is still my mentor. He still comes down to LA to work with our current students, but also, to me, more importantly, to teach me. He's still my mentor, and it's an incredibly blessed position to have that. He still teaches me. I'm not a master in this technique. I'm an expert. This happens to be under one of the best masters in the world at it, so I feel very blessed for that. Martin, his history, he is one of the final teachers. There's the Meisner estate of Sanford Meisner recognizes 21 first-generation teachers. These are the teachers who were selected and taught by Sanford Meisner to continue teaching this technique. And he was doing that with teachers from the very beginning, 1930s to 40s, 50s. Martin Barter was one of the final, not the last, but one of the final teachers that assisted Sanford Meisner, worked side by side with him. And when Sanford Meisner and his partner, Jimmy Carville, came out to Los Angeles in 1990 for the final time, Martin and his wife at the time, Jill Gatsby, also relocated to Los Angeles. And they continued teaching this technique at various locations around North Hollywood, California. One of the locations was the Actors Workout Studio. Martin had his classes there. Sandy would come over and sit in on his classes. Sanford Meisner taught out of West. Robert Carnegie, known as one of the first generation teachers, has his own school and his own way of teaching, a variation of Meisner Technique. But Sandy was teaching his intensives out of there as well. But then in '95, Sandy said, let's do our own school. And one of the key things they wanted to do was a theater company of Meisner-trained actors to do new material and classic and contemporary material. So a theater company of actors that spoke the same. So they found a 50-seat theater in North Hollywood, and they put up the name, the Sanford Meisner Center. 95 to 97, it was the last location that Sanford Meisner worked out of and taught out of before he passed away, and his memorial service was there as well. And from that, Martin Barter continued the school and theater company. It disbanded over the teaching of the technique. Martin maintained, and he maintains it the way that Sanford Meisner left it behind, being that he worked with him, he assisted him in New York, trained under him, and then came out to Los Angeles with him to continue this work. Going back even further, talk a little bit about the history. This all with a group of actors back in New York in the 30s, 1931, 1932. A group of actors, about 31 of them, got together and formed a theater company called the Group Theater. And actors in there were influenced by who I refer to as our great-grandfather, Konstantin Stanislavski. He was a Russian teacher and director with the Moscow Art Theater. A group of actors had come through America and toured and showed their work in mid-20s, 1925-26. And a number of the actors in the group theater saw their work and were very influenced by it. They saw what Stanislavski was teaching, and the work was very real, very truthful, and had depth to it, a level of acting that hadn't really been seen in America's work ever. They were influenced by that, and Lee Strasberg, one of the founding actors of the group theater, reached out to Stanislavski and asked him, how do you teach this stuff? Stanislavski called it the system. How do you teach your actors this? And he gave him his notes in Russian. Lee Strasberg had them translated to English. In the group theater, when it had started up, he began teaching actors, here's this thing that the Russians are doing. It's really good. Let's work on that. And in effect, the birth of what we refer to as method acting. The actors, not just the 10 years. And they their style of acting and were a think tank. They created and what they did. Not as big people. Robert Lewis, Bobby Lewis. He also variation, a derivative of Stanislavski's system further on into the history. And he taught at Yale in the 70s. School of Drama, you might have heard of that. They trained good actors.
Right.
His work that he developed and grew from what it all started in the group theater came from that. But the three major ones, the three major teachers and, if you will, our grandparents of acting, American acting, are Adam, Stella's work in the middle. We'll talk about that if we have the time to look. From that little think tank of actors. all of them developed their techniques over the 65-year period. Also in the group, 1935, I think it was invited to teach acting at a conservatory school. It was a school that taught performing arts. So it wasn't just acting. They have teachers for, and they still do, they still exist, for movement, for dance. And in the past few years, they've added work and things of that nature. But as a conservatory, they have a program, basically a training program that actors can go and train, artists can go and train. Sanford Meisner was hired to teach their action, and in the mid-30s. And from that point on until he left the neighborhood playhouse in 1990, he built this acting technique. It didn't happen overnight. People have heard like rapid, all they didn't come up in 1940. He groomed and kept it over time. So did Konstantin Stanislavski, great. These things. So Sandy, 1958 to 1960, he was hired in a studio that now is 20th Century Fox to new talent. He was working for the studio and actually working in films as well. He was doing his work as an actor, but he got that experience of what it's like to be in the Hollywood system. Stella Adler came from a family of way back in the day. A lot of you these old theater acting techniques, the grand, well, they're designed for theater. They don't work for film and television. They're outdated, aren't they? Without realizing that, again, it developed over all this period of time. And these teachers did have that experience. They did know what it was like to work. A lot of the things that you do in the audition, in on set, are built into the technique. They are not in these acting techniques. And their acting muscles, you know.
Ranjiv, sorry to cut you off. We're going to pause for just a second just because something is cutting out. So just give it 1 second. We'll just reset.
Sure.
Give you a chance to drink some water. Give me 1 sec. Gotta love it, right? Give me 1 sec while I reset this for you. I know, right? Thanks, everybody. Want to just make sure everyone can hear everything. All right. Give me 1 more sec.
Sure. I will chat messages or something that's not working.
Yeah, they just we're missing some pieces of it, so. How's that? Is that a little bit better? Everybody? Still, does it seem like we're on a better page now? Okay, let me just do this.
Maybe. I'm uncertain.
Gotta love it. Alrighty. I think let's just get into it and we'll power through.
All right.
just because I don't want to go through a whole like reset your router thing. So we're just going to keep going down this. Okay. So you talked a little bit about this. So there are three techniques. There's Meisner, Adler, and Strasberg that formed in parallel. So
Yeah,
can you talk about those and kind of what the difference is there?
sure. Actually, key common actors who train under these techniques, the end result is emotionally open, and that's what techniques do. They create the audience watching. Usually, it's a Strasberg actor. The techniques and how they teach differences in there. But again, the end result is an open, truthful actor. It's a level of work that you achieve over 5, 6 craft. It's a craft. It's an art. You're going to build it. These techniques to your training program. Begin and end. Once you're done, other classes keep you going. But and yeah,
I'm sorry, one second, Ranjiv. I'm going to